Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 49 Volts. I am your host, Josh, and today we have a really amazing guest. This is absolutely my favorite follow on LinkedIn. In fact, I really enjoy the people on LinkedIn who do sort of the fake virtue signaling, which was absolutely a copy and paste from ChatGPT. And I saw you leave scorch marks on at least a couple people this week who were doing that. So I always enjoy that. I think you always have a lot of profound things to say. Our guest today is Sonny Tai, who served many years in the U.S. Marine Corps. So thank you for your service. He also did PowerPoints at Accenture and CBRE. I appreciate the humor there, the work history, but most importantly, for those of us in the security industry, you are a co-founder and currently the president of Actuate. So, Sonny, thanks so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it, man. I appreciate the compliments. I mean, I'd say I probably look up to you a bit too, because I've always wanted to get into start and make more video content. I've started posting about this, that content is king nowadays. Like, if you can't get people's attention, you don't really have a business. And the best form of content is video. I just 100. Can't stand the way I look on video. It's one of those self-deprecating or I don't know, man. Like, so I've thought about making video content. I never had the balls to actually go and make video content. So the fact that you put yourself on podcasts every single day on video, I think that it takes courage and it takes decisiveness, and I think it's great stuff, man. So I think hopefully sometime later this year, I probably won't start a podcast, but may follow in your footsteps and record more video instead of just typing words.
Well, I appreciate that. You ever need any tips, any help, I'm here.
Good.
But nobody likes the way they look on video, the same way that none of us back in the old days when we started recording our voicemails, our greeting, nobody likes the way their voice sounds. I mean, I'm just kind of not worried about it. I mean, you get over it after a while, you see yourself on video enough, you get kind of comfortable and used to it. But I think you have a lot of interesting things to say. I think your videos would do well. And I wanted to start off kind of with the first topic to discuss. And this is when I reached out to you. You posted something that I thought was very honest and transparent, like a lot of your content that you post. I really appreciated it. And I have this conversation with a lot of people in the security industry specifically. And I think that a lot of executive levels like yourself don't want to bring this topic up. And I think there could be a lot of reasons for that. But, to sum it up, you basically were questioning, how much scale you could get out of a security venture in terms of the outcome. And I think the best quote in here was, maybe the security industry just isn't conducive to venture scaled outcomes. So you outlined a lot of reasons for that, but I kind of want to start with maybe just briefly a summary of what you were trying to say there. But then is there anything the security industry itself, within the industry, I'm not talking about outsiders like Verkada coming in, is there anything we can do better as an industry to improve that?
Geez, that's a loaded question that I'm not sure I have the answer to. And these days, I wouldn't consider Verkada to be even an outsider, right? Like, they're at every single trade show. They're at every single professional association. They have relationships with traditional security integrators that do a lot of distribution for them. To be honest with you, to answer the first part of your question, I guess the reason why I wrote that is that the term venture scale in traditional kind of the startup VC ecosystem, which historically has not been super active in physical security, although that has changed over the past, I'd say 5 or 6 years. It means building $1 billion startup, right? The prototypical examples of venture scale are some of the companies that we all know of that have emerged out of nowhere to become massive businesses that didn't exist 10 years ago, right? Your Instacarts, Ubers, Airbnb, freaking Coinbase. I mean, Figma is a great example, right? Who the hell knows who the fuck was Figma 5-6 years ago? And now they're worth like $60 billion, something crazy, right? That's a power of venture scale. And I just noticed that in physical security, where are our true venture scale startups? And even when you look at companies like Verkada and Flock Safety, and when I look at Flock Safety, I really I get self-conscious, right? Because I remember looking up Flock Safety on Crunchbase in 2018 when we were idea stage and they were idea stage. And we're thinking, oh, that's an interesting company. We're not going to compete with them because we're not overlapping, but it's a company in our space, start at the same time. And now, they're like $3-4 billion valuation, and we're a fraction of that, right? But even Verkada and Flock Safety, they don't hold a candle in terms of size and scale to some like cybersecurity startups, like Wiz, for example. Palo Alto Networks is not a startup anymore, but some of the big cybersecurity startups, they're like multi-decacorns. And you look at Verkada and Flock, they're $3-4 billion, which is very, 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 very impressive. Don't get me wrong. But they're not the type of they haven't reached the same scale as most cybersecurity companies. So I started thinking about why the reason for that is, and that's what got my post started. And I think that, I don't know if this is something that the physical security industry itself can change. I think that for most companies, physical security is an afterthought. And it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of us. And I wrote that in my post. I said, if a company gets ransomwared by North Korea through a hack, it could cause them tens to hundreds of millions of dollars in damages, right? If a company has all their data leaked, all of their users, they could suffer reputational costs that could destroy the company. An extreme example of that is, now this is a bad company and an immoral company, a bad example, but it's a very salient one, so I want to use it. Like the Ashley Madison hack, right?
Oh yeah,
what was it, like 10 years ago when it happened?
Yeah, I remember that.
It destroyed the company, and there's no physical security event that would destroy a company, right? There's a mass shooting in Midtown where we're based in New York, where this guy came in with a rifle and killed 4 dudes and then killed himself. But NFL and Blackstone headquarters.
Yep.
And let's be real, right? NFL and Blackstone, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. They're going to pay a few $1 million to each of the victims, sweep it under a rug, and then call it a day. So are they going to care as much about physical security as they do about cybersecurity? And I just don't think that they will. So as a result, it all comes from a demand side, right? It's going to cascade down to those of us who are selling physical security products and services. They're going to move slower. They're going to spend less money. And that's going to impact those of us who are building tech startups to be able to try and scale a true venture scale business. It's going to be much, 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 much harder. If you told me this 5 years ago or even 3 years ago, I'll be like, no, we're going to build $1 billion company. Now, after repeatedly getting punched in the face, it's like, you know what? We're going to build a nice business, but look, we're not going to become Verkada or Flock, and we're definitely not going to become Wiz. That's just, face the music, and that's just the honest to God truth. So,
no, those were good points that you made. I mean, I guess, is it even just $1 billion now where they would consider a startup to become a unicorn? I mean, is that still the benchmark?
I mean, unicorn is still $1 billion, but I think you bring up a pretty salient point. I think VCs, especially like the tier 1 VCs, that really want to try and hit those decacorn outcomes now, right?
Sure.
Of course, they'll still take the unicorn outcomes. But yeah, I think for those of you in the audience who don't know how VCs work, how venture capital works, right? Because a lot of times I have people in physical security that come and ask me, hey, Sonny, can you teach me how to fundraise? Can you make investor intros to me? And I'll go through their business. I'm like, look, it's nothing against you or your business. VCs won't invest in your company. And it's not because you're a bad founder. It's not because you have a bad business. It's the nature of your business. VCs want a low percentage chance at hitting a multi-billion-dollar outcome. And if you bring them like a 50% chance that you'll give them a $50 million outcome, they're not going to be interested. Right? It's about power laws. Like power laws mean, I forgot who was the initial like seed investor of Facebook. I think the initial seed investor in Facebook also invested in Uber. I remember reading about this like years and years ago.
Yeah.
But basically, like your top returning company returns more than all of your other companies combined. Your second best returning company returns more than number 3 in all of them combined. And it just cascades down. And I guess number 1 for them was Facebook. And number 2 was Uber. And it's called a power law, right? So you can lose money on 90% of your investments. And if you hit on one that ends up becoming Airbnb or Uber or Coinbase, it returns your entire fund multiple times over. And that's what early stage investors are banking on, right? So if you come with like an integration business or even a software business that sells to a relatively limited market in physical security, like those investors won't back you just because of the nature of your business, and they don't see the potential of a power law outcome in what you are building. And it's not an indictment against you as a founder or you or your business. It just that you're playing a different game than these investors want to play.
For sure. And I'll leave names out of it in my case. But, I was, until last year, a part of a venture that was led by extremely successful founders from the security industry in the past. And the game really had changed. I think we found over this last 5-year period where we were trying to get off the ground and get that institutional investment. As you say, they were not interested in these lower outcomes, regardless of the higher percentage of hitting it. Whereas 20 years ago, I think that was very different. So I think the game has really changed. And I think, maybe what you're pointing to here is the fact that with the security industry, it is kind of a very focused niche type of business versus some of these other unicorns you mentioned. I mean, I think in a consumer-based economy, anything that is, I don't want to say retail, but, business to consumer, I think you have a much larger, not pond, but ocean that you're fishing in, and a lot more, a lot higher market cap of what you could produce. And maybe that's an influence on why it's a little harder for us to get that institutional investment.
Yeah, I think I would be remiss not to say that you can still raise venture funding in physical security. There are some investors that would be willing to play that game where they're okay with $100, $200 million exit, but they want a higher probability of being able to hit those types of exit metrics. And usually these investors will invest less money in at lower valuations than your name brand tier 1 like Sequoia, Andreessen, Excels of the world that want unicorn outcomes, right? At least at the seed stage. But yeah, I mean, it's to go back to your original question about that post. That's what got the wheels turning in my head. It's like I was curious to see how many unicorns there were in physical security versus cybersecurity, and I knew that cybersecurity had more. I didn't know that was like 70 to 2.
Yeah.
So that was a bit surprising.
And cyber being something so critical in today's world, and so many new threats, and it seems like a growing market still. I think maybe even, advancements in AI or what we refer to as AI nowadays. And God help us when we get to quantum, based on some folks I talk to and their opinions on that. I mean, I think that there's a huge market there for growth and potential. And as you say, there's a severe consequence for a lack of cybersecurity that's very devastating for organizations.
We always want to say like nothing's more important than human life, right? But I just don't find that to be true. At least when it comes to where people are willing to put their investments, right?
I think that's well said.
Let's just call a spade, right? Companies exist to create shareholder value by pretty much any means necessary in a country that's as capitalistic as the United States, which is the most capitalistic major economy on planet Earth, and it's created a lot of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, companies are going to put investments in areas where there's maximum financial impact. And if somebody gets hurt or dies, unless it's like a key executive, how much do they care? I'd say they care some, but like not as much as you would think. And I know it's a controversial thing to say, but I think it's the ground truth.
It is the exact same thing that I say to my kids when we watch the news, because I see examples of it around the world, not security industry and focus, but just in general. I mean, money, power is way more important than human life. We see that demonstrated. It's just not the thing to say.
Day in and day out. You see it day in and day out, right? Like,
for sure.
Why is there a war in Ukraine right now? Like, it's such a pointless war. But somebody who wanted ego and power didn't care about human life, even of his own people. Right? So, a topic for a different day, but
for sure. And I am starting to think we would probably agree on some of these things. Do you think that, based on the conversation we just had, do you think that is placing any limitations on our ability to innovate as an industry? Because sometimes we hear that, and I have some personal gripes, like how are we not at a place now where every security product has an interface that works on any device? How are we not, PWA focused, more modern? I mean, we have a lot of thick clients out there that only work on Windows. We have a lot of very old technology. This should not be the case in today's world at all. And yet it still seems to be some of the leading products are in this condition. I mean, do you think that this lack of unicorn potential means that there's not as much reason to invest in better approaches to our customer experience?
It 100% limits our ability to innovate as an industry, because innovation comes from talent. And if you are the best and the brightest, do you want to come and slog it out in a physical security industry where you have to go through brutal sales cycles to maybe get a $20,000 contract? Or do you want to go into cybersecurity or a different field where people can make decisions a lot more quickly? They'd be willing to invest a lot more money. And quite frankly, you'll be able to have a lot more impact, right? Like, let's look at the AI revolution that's gone on since the whole AI craze that's gone on since OpenAI released ChatGPT 2 years ago. Sorry, not released ChatGPT, but GPT-3, right? That's really when people are like, holy shit, this is actually pretty good.
Sure. Yeah.
There have been dozens, if not hundreds of, there's been countless companies, more than I've ever seen, of young founders. I'm talking about college dropouts and fresh college graduates going from goose eggs, 0 to 10 mil plus ARR, 8 figures in annual recurring revenue in less than a year, because they have built something and sold into fields where people are willing to make fast decisions and uptake their product. And that's just not physical security. Physical security, like, I can't tell you how many times we have demonstrated value. We have champions within an organization that say, hey, you are the best product we've ever tested. We want to use you. And it's still months and years before we can get an actual agreement executed. We've seen that time and time again. So yeah, like, if this is how an industry operates, and by no means am I being like, I'm not trying to be critical of the physical security industry, right? Like, I've made a lot of friends in the industry. Like, I enjoy my time in the industry, but this is just how it is. It's just how this is a reality you have to face, right? So if you got this young hotshot from Stanford or MIT that wants to go and build a big company, like, why would they come and build in physical security where shit takes forever? And like, honest to God, truth is that, like, they just wouldn't. They just wouldn't. I mean, even Verkada, right? Like, Verkada, I think the founders were like previously successful founders, and I think like Hans Robertson came from Meraki. And these are like 40, 50-year-old guys. and like they know the playbook, and they came in to wash, rinse, repeat, and achieve a lot of success. But you're not going to get very rarely going to get that like young hotshot that wants to come and build a massive company really, really, really quickly, because that's very, very difficult to do in physical security. And as a result, there's just going to be less innovation within the industry. The key to innovation is speed, man. And this is, I tell people all the time, this is the slowest moving industry on planet Earth. Before this, I was at CBRE as a contractor, and I've become good friends with the former chief strategy officer, SVP of strategy, Sohn Chinoy. And Sohn used to say, guys, commercial real estate is the slowest moving industry on Earth. Oh, yeah, I was like, Sohn, bro, you have not seen physical security, man. You think commercial real estate is slow? Dude, physical security, brother. So yeah, innovation is tied to speed. And in physical security, there's very little speed going on, and that's going to limit innovation. It just is. So.
I would agree. And I love the security industry. I've been involved with many different, of what we consider low voltage industries. Security has been among my favorite. I mean, people genuinely, sincerely care about the mission to make people safer. I mean, it's a good bunch of people. So I don't ever mean to disparage them either, but I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I spent 7 years with 2 different cloud platforms, and coming from my background where I was also in IT, and I went through that, I feel like at the end of 2009 or early 2010, the conversation in IT was, what is your cloud strategy? Do you think this is real? How's this going to go? Within a year and a half, the traditional IT consultant was dead. They were gone. They either became a managed services provider, and all of these things evolved, and it happened, as you say, it happened very fast, and it created a better experience and a better result for the customers. And you either got on board, or you went from owning your own IT consultant firm to being an employee from an MSP. And it moved really, really quick. And as you say, in the year of our Lord, 2025, we still do not have I think, majority of products that operate with the cloud. And that happened 15 years ago for everybody else. I mean, we're a little bit slower.
I'd say a lot slower. The best analogy I have for the physical security industry is the offensive line, right? Like, you get no credit when things go well. If things go well, it means nothing's happened, right? Yeah. You literally get no credit for that. But if something goes wrong, it's your ass. Look at the Midtown shooting.
Right.
You have all these jabronis coming out of the woodwork saying that, oh, you fucked up, or Allied Universal fucked up. It's like, do you really think that the VP or SVP of security for that building, who's probably a senior executive that's making like, $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 a year, you really think that VP of security didn't know what he was doing? You really think that these Allied Universal guards that are paid $22 an hour, you expect them to stop a guy with a rifle? Like, there's just so many like layered, unrealistic expectations. And when there's a failure, like, everything's on you. And yeah, and when things go well, like, you get no credit for anything. There's no such thing as like, okay, well, my physical security department led us to 2x revenue growth, right? Like that doesn't exist. So you get all the blame when things go wrong. You get none of the credit when things go well. So as a result, this is nobody's fault. That's just the way it is. As a result, people play to not get fired. That's how physical security professionals play. And can you blame them? That just
the environment you're in. I get it. Yeah.
That's who wants to lose their job because they took a chance to make things possibly better, but it didn't work out. You're not going to get credit anyway if things get better. If things don't go well, then you're going to get canned. So who's going to be more aggressive and take those chances? Everybody's going to be risk averse, and it's not their fault. That's just the way things are. I can't think of a single other. Sometimes, like you may look at other countries or other cities or other ecosystems where things are done differently, things are done better. I can't think of a single country in which physical security moves fast. So that goes to show, like, is there actually another playbook where this is possible? I don't know. But if there is, it's not really been tried yet. So.
And the points you make about that recent shooting, and I don't want to claim to know all of the details, but that one's kind of befuddled me a little bit, the amount of criticism there, because first of all, you have someone that drove across country on a mission, a very troubled person, obviously, who wanted to target the NFL over CTE and other issues. I mean, I think that's the symptom, not the problem. I think he definitely has some type of emotional trauma or something wrong in his life, but that is what I'd call a lone wolf scenario. That is totally out of left field. Who could have predicted that? And
stop a lone wolf. How do you stop a lone wolf?
Right? Yeah. And the other thing I would say too is, his intention was to go to the NFL offices, but he was unable to. My understanding is the reason that people were injured where they were injured or killed where they were killed is because the only available floor was the floor for the CBRE office, which I believe is available because they need people to come in and maybe look at spaces or interact with the public. I mean, it seemed like the rest of the building was not accessible, including where he wanted to go and do damage. So, I mean, it feels like, we don't want to take for granted how awful it is what happened, but it feels like it could have even been much worse. I don't know.
It could have been way worse.
Yeah.
You're in New York City with a long rifle. You can easily shoot 50 to 100 people. Easily.
Oh, yeah.
Before NYPD shows up, right? He had a specific target in mind, and maybe I want to make sure I didn't get the facts wrong. He had a specific target in mind. When he couldn't reach those targets, he shot 4 people and he shot himself. And thankfully, he shot himself. Unfortunately, because I live in New York. All right, those buildings are packed. There's tons and tons and tons, and that's why I made the post about potentially good guy with a gun, potentially hitting civilians. New York City is a different animal, man. There are so many. It's not quite like Shibuya in Tokyo, but for the United States, it is the most densely populated city in the United States, right?
For sure.
There are times where I'm trying to walk and I can't because there's so many people in front of me and I have to weave if I want to walk at my pace. Topic for a different day, but I guess in a perverse way, we're lucky that he only shot 4 people because he could have gotten way, way, way more if what he wanted in this crooked mind was to get as many people as possible.
Yeah. And again, his target was not accessible to him because of physical security. So like I said, I don't want to jump up and down and call it a huge victory. I don't want to miss the opportunity to see some lessons learned and maybe what could have been different and better. We should always want to do that. But it's back to your point, the offensive line situation, no credit, all blame. I mean, I think some lives were saved that day. It just doesn't necessarily outwardly appear like that. And I don't feel like Allied or anyone deserves any criticism. By the way, thank you for that off-duty officer and sacrifice he made to help stop that situation as well.
And is there an offensive line that exists that never lets a quarterback get pressured? That doesn't exist, right? It's
never going to be zero.
Is there body armor that can prevent you from never getting hit? No. Physical security is the same way. A determined lone wolf. Yeah, it's impossible it's impossible. Until the day that we teleport police officers on site as soon as AI detects something, until the day that technology is invented, it's never going to happen. and people were always like, oh, like, they could have used better officers or whatnot. But like, you don't know where a shooter would strike. Like, how many buildings are there in New York? You're going to put a former SWAT guy in every single city corner. Like, there's not that many. There's not enough of those kinds of officers to go around to protect. Like, it's impossible, unfortunately.
We only have so many Navy SEALs, and Joe Rogan already hired half of them, right? So.
And those guys, and I said this, right? Those guys are working EP details and protecting high net worth people, and they're making very, very good livings. They're not trying to stand guard outside of a building, right? They're not going to do that.
Yeah, and among the other topics for other days, I still think that until we do a better job of trying to understand people in our own lives, what they may be going through, and understand who people who are hurt emotionally or struggling are capable of, we're never going to stop these things. We had a near shooting at our school district here where my kids go to, where there was a young man who was planning to shoot the next high school over in our district. And his grandmother sensed that something was wrong and kind of dug in a little bit and found that he had plans to do this and found that he had weapons hiding under his bed, and she turned him into the police, and he spent 3 years in jail. And, because she did not misunderstand the capability of a young man who's troubled, whether she loved him or not. And I think too often we just think it can't be somebody we know that would ever do something like this, and we don't take action that could help.
Look, man, I'm known for being like very little filter, right? And people in the industry are not going to like what I say. But this is what I truly believe. The matter of fact is that there's mentally unwell people in every single country on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
In America, mentally unwell people can get firearms much more easily than anywhere else. And that is the difference. You think crazy people don't exist in Japan, the UK, and Germany? And I get there's knife crime, but like, you don't kill 50 people with a knife, right? Like, that's a difference. But it is what
I
it
get
is.
it.
I respect people's rights to gun ownership, but there's a benefit and cost to it. That's all. That's
the right way to put it. And by the way, growing up in a law enforcement and military family, I'm very pro-gun, but I also believe in being reasonable and logical. And there's two sides of a coin. I think is really what you just said. So I think there's benefit to that freedom for us to own those things, but we also have more. That's kind of what I'm getting to. We have like way more responsibility as well, because these things are available. And whether you are, the owner of a gun shop, or whether you are a family member, not buying things or making things accessible to someone, who's going through some things and struggling. I mean, there's so many personal responsibility actions that I feel are also not being taken. But the fact of the matter is, we have a right. We have several rights. This is one of them that are not prevalent around the rest of the world, and it does present additional risk as well. There's no reason for us to hide that fact.
Yep, agree completely.
Well, listen, on a lighter note, you commented recently that social media has, as you've been out there more and doing what you're doing on social media, that you've seen some amount of value for your business. Obviously, I'm in marketing, and I agree with that. But, why do you think, we may end up having the same conversation a second time. Why do you think the security industry seems to not embrace this maybe the way some other industries do? Because we don't seem to be as active.
It's funny you mentioned the same conversation, right? We have a very risk-averse industry.
Yeah.
We have an industry that prefers not to take shots downfield. As a startup founder, I have no choice but to take shots downfield. I don't have the marketing budget of Milestone, Avigilon, or Verkada, right? Like, the biggest risk to us as a company, at least in the past, now I think we're doing better at it. In the past is being unknown. It's like nobody knows who the hell you are. And I didn't always set out to become outspoken on LinkedIn. But I think after my co-founder left, because my co-founder was much more risk averse, and I respected his wishes, and I, was much more muted on my LinkedIn presence. But after he left, I decided to be myself a lot more on LinkedIn, and I started getting some positive reinforcement. Of course, sometimes I've said stuff that's been more controversial and people put me on blast, and it just comes with the territory, right? But I increasingly found it was more positive than negative. I've landed investors who found me on LinkedIn. We've landed customers that dropped into my DMs and said, hey, I've been following you for a long time. I have this opportunity. I want to work with you. I was invited by a guy who I really looked up to, ended up becoming a friend. His name is Ry Barcott, is a former Marine officer, invited me to his luxury box in the Army-Navy game a couple years ago. And I met Senator Mark Kelly. And I was like, oh, no, I met him for like 30 seconds. It was pretty cool, right? I got to shake his hand, introduce myself. And Jake Wood invited me he had an extra ticket to the Marine Corps Ball at the Intrepid Carrier where I met Dakota Meyer, right? So these are just like really, really, really cool opportunities that have come up just from me being myself on social media. And yeah, like as a smaller company, that as long as I'm not doing something immoral or unethical,
right?
I think that the pros of being known outweigh the cons of some minority who may not like what you have to say.
Which is the reality of this earth anyways, right? You're never going to please everyone.
There have been cons. Like I've had investors who didn't like what I posted, started texting me and asking me to delete posts. Angel investors. My board, actually a couple board meetings ago, asked me to refrain from criticizing the administration, which I have complied. And Ken got an anonymous email from some guy, basically saying that what I'm doing is inappropriate or something like that, right? Of course, it doesn't feel good when these things happen. But of course, they're also, to some extent, are also lessons learned, right? I'm not so hard-headed where I'm like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. I'm never going to stop. It's like, okay, well, these are all calibrations. Like, I can't go full on like one direction or the other, but there's a certain sweet spot where the content that I write will attract an appropriate amount of attention and not be so off the rails where people will stop doing business with us. And I think that I'm straddling that sweet spot fairly well so far. But of course, I don't want to go too far in one direction or the other where it could potentially pose a risk to the business as well. But that's the art. Well, that's the, what do you call it? The delicate line you have to draw with content, right? Like if all you post is boring shit about your products, like you'll get no attention, you'll get no engagement. So sometimes you have to be a little bit spicy. I mean, look at American Eagle with the Sydney Sweeney ad, right? I personally think that is the stupidest controversy in the world. Like, Of course it's not an ad about eugenics or white supremacy. It makes no sense. This is a multinational company. Of course, they're going to want to play it safe. But on the other hand, it's like, it's a good-looking actress. Of course, she has great genes. Of course, she's genetically gifted. It's like, is it bad to say that? But it stirred up a lot of controversy, right? Again, Jaguar with the pink cars that apparently were dropping sales. So sometimes content goes well in your favor. Sometimes it doesn't go well in your favor. But I do think that as companies, if you want to continue to stay relevant, continue to grow, you do have to take some shots downfield. Sometimes you throw a Hail Mary, it gets intercepted by the other team. What can you do? You got to take the shot downfield. Otherwise, if you just run the ball every single time, you're going to lose the game. So.
And I think a big thing that people fail to realize until you mention it to them. And I think if you put a little thought into it, almost any person you speak to is going to process this and go, yeah, I do. We feel like we know people that we see produce content. We feel like we kind of have a relationship with them. Your audience builds a relationship with you where they kind of already have an idea that you're the type of business or person that they want to deal with. They already have a sense of kind of your values and what you're about. And they've kind of already made the decision they like you and they want to work with you. And I think that's the value. I think you do have to be careful where some things are divisive and maybe not even helpful. And maybe that's some of what you've experienced. My brain was scanning for what you've said that would be along those lines. I can't think of what it is, but I think that, you know, I try to leave politics, religion, things that, you know, really don't have a right answer, that don't help. You know, I try to think of things that are more like uniting than dividing whenever possible, but certainly not in a phony way. I mean, I think you can keep it real and be authentic and not necessarily punch people in the face unnecessarily. I think would be the message.
Well, other than you know, some toxic LinkedIn content out there, I obviously don't aspire to punch people in the face on my posts. But I don't necessarily intentionally avoid politics. I think that politics, the root word for politics is policy, right? And policy shapes every facet of our lives in business.
Oh, for sure.
That's honest to God truth, right? Whether you agree with the president's tariff policies or not, they impact our lives. It makes you know, prices of stuff go up or down. It shapes how much countries are willing to export to us. It potentially enables us to grow more of a homegrown industry that makes America. It's very, very complex, right? But it does touch every aspect of our lives. And I think that it is possible to have healthy conversations about some of these topics. What I really try to avoid doing when touching on these topics is say like so-and-so is a piece of shit, right? Like I really avoid doing that.
Exactly.
There's a Chinese saying that says 对事不对人. It means you target the issue and not the person.
Yeah.
So I really try to do that if I'm talking about, you know, like the mass shooting in Midtown where potentially gun policy comes to a forefront, or immigration policy or trade policy. Like I care about those issues because they affect our daily lives. But I really try to avoid like so-and-so is wrong and so-and-so is a bad person. It's really more of like, okay, here's my perspective about why this could be good or it could be bad. And I try to be thoughtful about it. And what I found is relating it back to the industry is that I have a lot of people that I think like me. You know, I think that there's a healthy amount of mutual respect. And I know for a fact we voted differently from each other, and that's perfectly fine. And they say they still say they appreciate me because I'm willing to have these healthy conversations where we might disagree on one thing or the other, but we should continue to have these like free exchange of thoughts, because like no side is completely right. Like
agreed.
Each side, the reason why elections swing back and forth in terms of like which party is in power is because each side has legitimate grievances and legitimate merits to their arguments that resonate with a large portion of the American people. And the idea is to identify those things where like it serves the largest portion of the American people, right? And there's going to be some subjectivity on where those lines are drawn. And I think it's good to have some of these healthy conversations about it, as long as it doesn't devolve into like, oh, well, you're a piece of shit, or you're a piece of shit.
Right.
So
I agree with that. And for what it's worth, first of all, I'm politically independent, so no one likes my opinions typically, but I am, I think that if someone was criticizing you for discussing tariffs, I would have an issue with that, because that to me isn't politics. I mean, that is policy that is actually affecting the security industry very directly, because it is a global economy, and many different components of products, even if assembled in the US, are sourced from different parts of the globe. And I understand how things are spun by politicians, but in the end, the government is going to collect that tariff, and the vendor is going to charge you, the consumer, with the additional cost. And that is just the way it is. And it's not going to be any other way. So, when we're trying to figure out as an industry, are we going to see massive price increases or even possibly product shortages? As someone that does video and photography, I can tell you that I've been told by DJI that my extremely expensive $7,000 drone, even though I paid for coverage, if something happens, Customs and Border Patrol will seize that drone en route. So they cannot honor their warranty that I paid hundreds of dollars for at the moment. These, to me, I don't think that's politics. I think that's, as you say, that's policy, and that's highly relevant to the business.
Well, it 100% is politics, because it's government officials that are making decisions that affect our lives, right?
Fair.
But yeah, I mean, look, there's, again, each side has legitimate concerns and grievances that each have merits, right? Like, do I wish that the United States of America didn't have our manufacturing base completely hollowed out, and most of what we use in day-to-day life is produced by other countries now we're now dependent on? That is a national security risk.
I agree.
We should try to do something about it. Whether these tariff wars are it or not, I generally don't know, to be honest with you. So like, it's one of those things where there's going to be very, very difficult trade-offs. And all I ask and I hope for is that government officials make decisions in good faith of what they believe will benefit the American people in the long run. That's all I hope for. But time and time again, I think I'm disappointed by it. Nobody's going to make the right decision 100% of the time, or even 80% of the time. But if you're in good faith, like absorbing all of the data and trying to make good decisions for the people, then that's all we can ask for in our political leaders. And I don't think we're getting enough, to be honest with you.
As someone who did not grow up politically independent but became one 20 years ago, I agree with that. That's all I want. I don't, I think there's a lot of fringe issues that are used to divide people, and I think are quite frankly distractions. And I feel like we're continuing to vote for the same thing, just two different logos, and we're getting a lot of the same results, and a lot of it's very selfish. And I think all the people want the same thing. I think, we just want them to make decisions, what's good for most people and what's good for the country. And, we're over here holding our breath, right? Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's a blessing to have the right to vote and to choose our leaders. At least we still have that. And a lot of people in the world don't. So,
100%.
I'm thankful for it. And as much as things could be better, they could be a hell of a lot worse. So that's why I remind myself.
Amen.
Yeah.
We are on our worst day here in America. We are so lucky to have what we have. But I do always warn people I know that please start appreciating it and taking a little more time to understand policy and what goes on, and care more about the voting process. Or someday we won't be so lucky.
There's a reason why we have a southern border crisis, right? Because this is one of the best countries in the planet Earth to live in. This country is so awesome to live in that people are willing to come here with no documents and try to work shitty ass, like under the table wages that are below federal minimum wage, and pack like 10 people to an apartment so that they can live in this country. Like that's how blessed we are, for those of us who get to live here and be citizens or be permanent residents and whatnot. Yeah.
And
it's a blessing.
That is what the Statue of Liberty is for, right? We are a nation of immigrants. We're a melting pot, and our economic and growth as a country has always come from that. So I do hope leadership gets better at solving these problems, because these are things that we need, and we're just not handling it right, in my view. So the next question, do you see a future where disruptors like Verkada take the lead for security products and technology? So back to that, I know we see this a little differently. I know that, Hans did found Meraki, and there was definitely a security component to that when it was sold to Cisco, but I still think he kind of brought like a Silicon Valley approach. He obviously did not come in and run that the way that traditional. I mean, do you think we're running the risk now that maybe outsiders like Verkada, if we want to call them that, are going to become the norm in the future if we don't modernize?
I don't even think Verkada is a disruptor, to be honest with you. Like, what can Verkada do that Vigilon can't do today? I don't know, to be honest with you. Is it like that much better, that much different? I think their innovation comes in their go-to-market. They have built an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And let me know if I understood this incorrectly, right? Because I've never used Verkada. I just like what I read on the internet and what I read in the past on IPVM. But they have come up with a product that's very easy to install.
Yes.
That you don't require getting like a security integrator to come in and do all the things that you would have needed if you want to install like a Vigilon or Milestone, all that stuff, right? And because of that, they've been able to be very, very, very aggressive in their go-to-market. They have a sales team that'll blow up your phone if you're a small business owner or like a school director of security or mm-hmm. IT, and they'll completely blow you up. Whereas traditionally, if you're a Milestone, a Vigilon, one of the big dogs, you go through your security integrators that originally have those relationships, and you rely on a channel to push your product. Nowadays, I think Verkada is much more collaborative with the channel, but they already have a brand that rivals the traditional incumbents. But I think most of their innovation is still in their go-to-market. It's absolutely, as much as Hanovich hates what they do, and what they do, some of it was a bit questionable, but it fucking worked, man. It worked. It's unbelievable. I mean, this is going back to like Silicon Valley playbook. I mean, this is the Uber playbook as well. Uber, for sure. Uber came into cities. They didn't ask for permission from city regulators and officials. They basically blitzkrieged a city so hard that you got so many users and so many drivers. They're already using you, and now all of a sudden, like, you either are forced to piss off your residents by kicking Uber out because Uber brought in such convenience, or you're going to bend the rules to accommodate Uber.
Yeah.
So Uber did the same thing. So Verkada kind of had a similar playbook in their go-to-market, right? And it worked really, really well for them. But in terms of like disrupting the industry, like they really bring something like that much more special than anyone else that's already in the industry. Like, I'm not super convinced of that, but their go-to-market machine is unreal. What's unreal, and very, very, very impressive.
I would agree. And they actually had a very good strategy. I mean, I've been laughed at previously by some of the older minds in marketing in the industry, but they were spending like.
Why are they laughing at you? These guys went from zero to a $4 billion company in like 8 years.
Well, so I've helped build products that supposedly were going to compete with Verkada, right? And we're actually kind of parallel while Verkada took off. And I would get laughed at because I would say, look, I've done the research here. They're spending $1.4 million a year with Yeti. And what they're doing is they've got this webinar, and it's a whole process that they've laid out. And I can't get they just start mocking me as soon as I say the word Yeti. The thing is that they did is, if you want to get that Yeti mug, that thing of value that I actually do want, and they made that investment in that product to send that out, you needed to provide them real, valid contact information. It wasn't going to be just some phony Gmail. And then they would send you the mug, and then someone from the bullpen, I think they started initially with like 35 people in an inside sales bullpen. That sales team is over 2,000 now, including several of my friends from within the industry. As you say, they're more channel focused now, but there was a process. We do good marketing, provide a really good webinar. We provide a really good handout that is worth putting your information in. Then you have a young person in the inside sales follow up and say, I'm going to send you a free camera now, and not gently, but like get them to accept that free camera on a trial. And then an outside salesperson would then come see them or follow up with them. And then, did you see how easy that was? Don't you want your whole system to be that easy? And I think they, I don't want to name names, but I mean, some people mocked me for saying this is what they did right. But that, from a go-to-market perspective, they recognized that the channel is going to be slow moving and they need to sell their product. And if you're not going to be with us, we're just going to go do it without you, just like that Uber thing that you're talking about. But the other key component, I think, that maybe it's not truly innovation, maybe the way you would see in another industry, but I think that our customer experience with our products, user interfaces especially, you shouldn't need a bunch of training to use a security product. You shouldn't hardly need any training at all. Like, this is, dude, that is over. Like, that's not how the world works. And so they created, a user interface and an experience where they could just scan a barcode and hang that thing and use it and get a very, a very quality result, on the other side of that. And to me, maybe that's not hugely technologically innovative. I think it is innovative from the end user experience to recognize that that was a point of friction for so many customers. And I feel like those two things is a big piece of why they took off.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of respect and begrudging admiration for the go-to-market machine built.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. But also, it comes from these pretty incredible founders who are able to go out and raise a shit ton of VC capital. I come nowhere even remotely close to their universe in terms of fundraising prowess. Like, this is very capital intensive to be able to build a go-to-market machine like that. And it requires you to go out and get VCs to write very, very, very big checks to believe in your vision. So they had all the right ingredients, and it built a pretty damn impressive company from scratch.
I agree.
From scratch.
I agree.
Respect.
Amen. I know that we only had an hour. Do you have just a couple more minutes, or do you need to get going?
Sure, a few more minutes, yeah.
So I've really enjoyed talking to you, so I'm just going to take full advantage here. So something I don't want to miss, I don't want to skip over here. On my mother's side, all of my uncles, many of my cousins have served in the military. I have a lot of respect for that. And I know that, I have some of my uncles have been very successful. One he was basically the CIO of the Coast Guard and eventually went on to work for Oracle, post-military retirement. Great, amazing career path for him. Another uncle was a school superintendent, but again, he went through the military path to get his college education. My mother's family grew up extremely poor. They were Western Pittsburgh. My grandfather was, ran the maintenance for one of those steel mills that got shut down. Right. So, they didn't have much. And yet you see all this success that came from the hard work and the discipline and taking that military route. Another thing I appreciate about you is I feel like you're an example of that as well. And I have a lot of respect seeing firsthand, the effort that goes in. You can't just show up for that job. That takes some work to get through boot and to do what you need to do. Do you think that maybe with some of the, and I disagree with some people on this, I don't think AI is taking all the jobs. I think there's a lot of offshoring and things going on as well, but the job market's changing, right? And so I don't think you can just maybe learn to code like they used to say 10 or 15 years ago and go make a six-figure salary. But we're now seeing many examples of a military life can lead to that. Do you think we may see an increase again in young folks maybe going to that route? Because I think we saw maybe a dip, or maybe I heard wrong, in military enlistment in recent years, and maybe that's going to maybe ramp back up.
I've seen that the statistics for military recruitment have increased towards the latter end of the Biden administration. That's continued to be strong throughout the Trump administration. I don't know exactly the reasons why, but I think that's encouraging. I think it's a good thing. I think that a military experience is transformative, at least for me, in all of the most positive ways. First of all, like aside from educational benefits and things like that, the military teaches you really good values. And not all vets take those values and carry on with them like through the rest of their lives, but I've certainly tried to. Some of those values, like, do the right thing when nobody's looking, integrity is paramount, take care of your Marines first before you take care of yourself, be decisive when you're making decisions. Like these types of things, like they are general, like character and operational pillars that work everywhere else in life beyond just the military. Right. And I think that it's for young men, especially, it's good to have that kind of value system instilled in you. Especially if you don't feel like you've gotten it from your parents, and not everyone's gotten it from their parents. Right. The second thing is like the educational benefits are unbelievable or unreal. Right? My graduate school would have cost $58,000 per year. Nowadays, it costs like $77,000 because the price goes up every single year, right? And I got to go for free between the GI Bill, Yellow Ribbon, and the school gave me a bit of a scholarship. Between those three, I went for free. I would have graduated with $150,000, $200,000 in debt if I did not have GI Bill and Yellow Ribbon. Well, actually, less than that because the school gave me a scholarship. But if I didn't have the scholarship, I would have graduated with a lot more in debt. But I still would have graduated with like $100K in debt or $80K in debt, which is a lot of money. So that's unbelievable. And the third thing related to educational benefits is that schools love veterans. And I don't know if it was always the case, but the bar to get into the most selective schools in the world is lower for veterans than, look, nobody wants a handout, right? I'm not saying it's a handout, but I think that schools feel that veterans bring something different to the table, and they're more willing to overlook like a somewhat lower test score, a somewhat lower GPA to bring that into their campus community. Okay. If somebody has been in Afghanistan, like walking patrol, or if somebody has, I don't know, led a motor vehicle platoon or led a convoy or something like, or if somebody's been a pilot or somebody has fixed aircraft and had, a lot of different types of experiences, and deployed, not even necessarily combat, right? Deploy to austere environments in Kuwait or been on a MU or stuff like that. Like these are all experiences like your average 18-year-old, even if they've been academically excellent and done a lot of like math Olympiads and played a piano, like all really, really like impressive and cool stuff. Like they will bring those experiences. So schools are more willing to admit vets, even if your academic credentials are not as strong. And that means veterans have a chance to get into Columbia, Brown, Harvard, MIT, right? Like, and I think vets should take advantage of that, because getting into schools like that, the benefits cascade throughout the rest of your life.
Yep.
It's very, very, very powerful. So when people ask me, would you recommend military service to other people? Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's changed my life for the better in all the best ways. My closest friends to this day are most of the people I met in the Marine Corps. So it's been great, man.
Do you think it made you a better leader now in your significant role there at Actuate?
Of course. Again, it goes back to the values they instilled in you in the military. Definitely.
All right. So last one. I really, you don't know how excited I am. I talk about you every day. You have a lot of followers that come your way from me. I'm a huge fan of
you're so kind
out there. And I mean it, because I don't tell this to everybody. But I'm very curious, a subject that I find fascinating. This is very Dunning-Kruger on my part. I'm not an AI developer or true expert, but I'm excited about AGI. Do you think that this next level of what some like me might call true AI, do you really think that's around the corner? I mean, these reports of by 2028, we'll see it. Do you think that's true? Or I have concerns, are we going to maybe see a plateau in the development of AI just because of maybe not just technology, but resources, like power and everything else that feeds into these?
The short answer is I don't freaking know, man. I mean, like the big tech guys, Sam Altman and all of them, they're claiming that it's close, right? And if you ask me,
raising funds when they say that. So
if you asked me a year ago, I would have said, yeah, AI is going to plateau. There's only so much data that, they've already scraped the entire internet. Like, how much better can AI get? But every time I use ChatGPT, and that's the one I use. I know there's a lot of other models that are just as good. Every time I use ChatGPT, it blows my mind how freaking good it is, man.
Yeah.
It is freaking ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in 2023, when GPT-3 came out, I was like, I mean, this is kind of cool, but it's kind of shitty in all the dumbest ways. But now, dude, it's unreal, man. It's unreal how good it is. And even if the improvements slow down, and I'm sure they will, I feel like it's gotten pretty close now to replicating a lot of human behavior and human logical reasoning analysis. Can it fully replace a human being? In some use cases, maybe. In other use cases, probably not, because there's a lot of edge cases where human judgment is going to have to come into play.
Right.
But the short answer is I don't know. But the longer answer is, like, a lot of the evidence is pretty convincing thus far that it could be possible. So I don't know.
So do you think, like, in your opinion, I have concerns that, you look at the birth rates from the different generations, and boomer era, there was like 5 something. It's always some point. I don't know what a 0.4 of a kid is, but I guess that's how the numbers roll. Over 5 children per family in that generation. I'm Gen X. I'm 46 years old. So my generation.
Oh, you look good, brother. Do you have a filter on?
No.
46.
I think I look better on camera somehow. I don't get it. But then you go, millennial and down. I mean, we're getting now, like, lower generations, it's going to be like 1 something child per family. So you do the math on that for an economy that always must grow in a nation. I feel like there's a huge gap. Like, at the same time, we're not managing immigration very well at a time where I think it's going to become paramount and important. We're going to need. And so my hope.
Look, I just moved out of my apartment in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And New York City is the most expensive city on planet Earth. So, but other cities are just as expensive. Other places are just as expensive in less severe ways. But I just moved out of my apartment. I had maybe 200 square feet to my name, maybe less than that. I can't afford a bedroom, so it's a studio. $3,700 a month.
It's crazy.
Okay, now that's New York. Okay, but in New York, incomes are also going to be higher. But there's a cost of living crisis. Like everywhere in the world now, every single country in the world.
Yes.
And what do people do when there's a cost of living crisis? Well, they stay with their parents longer. They don't get married. They don't have kids.
Yeah.
And when they do have kids, they may have 1.
Right.
If you're well off, you have 2.
Yeah.
Right. So the days where people have 3, 4, 5 kids, I think are going to be increasingly more and more rare. Agreed. So our population pyramid is going to be much more like inverted. it's less severe in the US for, I think, two primary reasons. But even for us, we're below replacement. I think we're 1.7 and replacement's 2.1. Look at the East Asian countries like, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, China, they're like in the low ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the US, it's less bad because we have a lot of land. So worst case, if you can't afford a city, you can go and move to like Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where you can still live, right? Like, and a lot of countries don't necessarily have that luxury. And also, obviously, we have immigration, and that helps our population continue to grow, even though our fertility rates are below replacement. But globally speaking, like this is a big issue in every country on earth. And wealth inequality is all-time high. Look, I'm not a communist, man. People are going to point me like, Sonny's just a socialist. But matter of fact, it's like we have companies that are worth $4.5 trillion. NVIDIA is worth $4.5 trillion. Okay, each NVIDIA employee accounts for $111 million of valuation. Right?
Wow.
And Elon Musk is worth $400 billion just by himself. Okay? So you have the extreme, like the most possible highest extreme of wealth. There's predictions that Elon Musk will be worth $1 trillion in 4 years. Yet you have masses of people who like can't make rent. And this is one of the better economies in the world, right? The U.S. economy is like one of the most resilient economies in the world, and we still have these issues. Now, in other countries, it's like way worse, even way worse, right? Outside of maybe like the Nordics, where the cost or where the quality of life for most people is still pretty good, but those are also small countries, right? Like Denmark is like 5 million people. It's a little different. So yeah, man, it's going to continue to get worse, I think, and I think at a certain point, the world population is actually going to start shrinking for the first time. I don't know when that's going to be. I'm sure there's researchers that will have predict that. I don't know, but I don't.
Peter Zeihan was speaking. I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Zeihan or what you think of him, but I watched. He did a speaking engagement last week, and he said at least for the U.S. it was going to be 70 years when we would face the population crisis. Obviously, he predicts much sooner for aging populations like Japan and China, where there have been, due to geographic space, there were limitations. I mean, I kind of understand why those things happen, but now they have an aging population, and that's not good for their future outlook. But one thing that I see as a positive, and this is why sometimes when people say, okay, if we get true, AGI, the artificial general intelligence that I misnomer intentionally as autonomous general intelligence, where the robots can walk amongst us. I'm increasingly starting to believe that maybe this could keep our way of life and economies going versus falling off that cliff. Do you think I'm all wet to have a positive hope and
I think
an outlook?
Policy, to be honest with you, right? Yeah. Like if it takes very little human input to maintain or exceed our current economic output, but all of the economic profits still float to the top, then everyone else still gets fucked. They just have no jobs, right? So it's whether or not, from a policy perspective, we're willing to say, okay, well, productivity is an all-time high. Productivity is getting better and better and better. We're doing all the things that we don't need humans for anymore. But we're going to still ensure that, whether from taxation, and you call it distribution of wealth if you want. I mean, at a certain point, if a lot of the human, like day-to-day human, like productive functions are going to be automated, you're going to have to redistribute wealth. Otherwise, you're going to have massive unemployment and unrest, and that's going to be bad for everybody, right? So it depends on policymakers, and I think that at a certain point, they're going to have to make some tough decisions. But for the time being, until they make those tough decisions, like more and more people are gradually going to suffer more and more and more. I'm be honest, right? Like the new bill that was passed, there's merits in that bill. There's good things in that bill. But also there's massive tax cuts to people who already pay very, very low taxes. like that's going to engender more wealth inequality, right? I hate to sound like this massive leftist, but I mean, those are just like nonpartisan calculations that have come out.
I agree.
So, I think it could be good. It could be like this utopia where robots do all of our work. We never have to do laundry anymore. We never have to do a lot of things that we enjoy doing today. And there's still a ton of economic output, but it depends on whether or not we're willing to direct that economic output to take care of the masses. I don't know. That's going to be maybe later in your or my lifetime and not in the immediate future. But in the immediate future, I think things will get slightly worse every year.
That's happening. I mean, that's not a prediction. That's occurring right in front of our eyes. I think most people would not call that a leftist view. I think that's a realist view. I guess my hope is that the robots can plug the gaps and maybe supplement a labor force that is waning in numbers, and certainly too much decline of population, regardless of any policy, is going to lead to, a decline in the quality of life in the civilization. There's not enough doctors, firefighters, police, or anything. I mean, you start to have more chaos, and that wealth disparity will only massively increase at that point.
Maybe we could RoboCop. So nobody knows, bro.
Well, my robots in my fantasy are friendly and fun, and they tell dad jokes, and I get along great with them. Man, I had high hopes for this conversation, and it was far exceeded. Man, I really appreciate you coming on here. Do you want to give a quick plug to Actuate and how anyone interested could get a hold of your organization?
Well, we're Actuate. We build AI software for security cameras. Mostly sell to security companies that monitor video to help them use the same number of people to monitor more cameras. So web address is actuate.ai. My email address is sunny@actuate.ai. You can also DM me on LinkedIn, and I get a lot of messages. I try to respond to everyone, but sometimes I fall behind.
Well, you've always responded to me. I've always appreciated it. And if you're watching this and you're not following Sonny on LinkedIn, what are you waiting for? Do it right now. This guy's great. I really appreciate you. I feel so good that someone with a mind like yours and your courage to speak and be yourself is a part of our industry. I think you're a total gem. We're lucky to have you. And I'm really lucky and appreciative that you're willing to come on my humble little program today. I'm really appreciative of that.
You're very kind, and I'll see you at GSX.
You got it, brother. I will be there. And for the rest of you, I've got some other awesome guests coming up soon. So we'll see you around. Goodbye for now.
All right.